As the cops started putting the pieces together, it hit me like a gut punch. My calm, put-together front was hiding a tornado of trouble inside. Lauren's journals, Lucas's sneaky games, and my sudden vanishing act all pointed to one brutal truth. The lies that had kept our marriage glued together were now the spark for a betrayal so shocking it didn't just break my heart, it ended in disaster. Was it love, revenge, or just plain hopelessness that pushed me to do what I did? Our house on that quiet, tree-lined street in Springfield looked like it belonged on a postcard, surrounded by perfect suburban homes straight out of a magazine. Inside our two-story place, I went through my days like a guy who'd spent years keeping everything in order, sticking to the life I'd worked hard to build. I'm an electrician, and at GL Tech, I've got a reputation for being the guy you can count on, always showing up and getting the job done. At 36, I'm in decent shape, blonde hair, blue eyes, and muscles from years of hauling tools and climbing ladders. But deep down, I was carrying this heavy knot of worry. Lately, I'd noticed Lauren acting different, and those little changes were starting to make me question everything. Lauren, my wife, is 35 and the total opposite of me, sharp, driven, and always thinking 10 steps ahead. She's a sociology professor at the college nearby, just starting a new junior faculty gig that's got her both fired up and stressed out. With her long dark hair and eyes that seem to see straight into your soul, she's gorgeous in a way that still catches me off guard. Her organized, disciplined vibe always balanced out my laid-back style, and for 8 years, we were solid. But lately, I'd picked up on some shifts in her. Sometimes she'd go quiet, staring off at nothing, other times, she'd be extra sweet, like she was trying to patch up some crack in our relationship I couldn't even see. What really threw me was how she started setting these new boundaries, especially about this seminar she had coming up in Cincinnati. One night while we were cleaning up after dinner, I brought it up. "Sounds like a big deal, that Cincinnati trip," I said, wiping down a plate. "Maybe I could take a few days off, tag along. We could hang out when you're not busy with the seminar." She froze, her hands hovering over the sink. "No," she snapped, her tone sharper than I was ready for. Then she caught herself and softened up. "I mean, we've got that spring break cruise planned, right? Let's save our time for that." I frowned but didn't push back. "If that's what you want," I said, shrugging. "Just figured it'd be fun." "It will be," she said, reaching out to give my arm a quick squeeze. "But this trip's a big deal for my career, and work's been nuts. I just need to focus." Her words stuck with me, chewing at my thoughts. Lauren never used to mind me coming along on her trips. Why was this one different? As the Cincinnati trip got closer, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Lauren was prepping for it like it was a military operation, packing days in advance and triple-checking her schedule. To me, it seemed like she was gearing up for more than just some academic conference. Our marriage, which used to feel so easy, was starting to feel like work. Sure, we still had good times, laughing about old memories or talking about maybe starting a family someday, but there was this weird distance between us now. I noticed she'd dodge my gaze when I asked about her job or her teaching assistant, Lucas Torres, a guy she used to mention all the time but now acted like she barely knew. On the morning Lauren left, she gave me a quick kiss goodbye, smooth as if she'd rehearsed it, her suitcase already loaded in the car. "Try not to live on pizza the whole time I'm gone, all right?" she teased, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I stood there watching her car pull away, a heavy feeling sinking into my chest like a stone. Alone in the too quiet house, I found myself staring at the cruise tickets tacked to our bulletin board. Something about how desperate she seemed to keep me from tagging along on this trip just didn't add up. I tried to brush it off, shaking my head, but as the day dragged on, that uneasy feeling clung to me like a shadow creeping across the life we'd built. I'd first noticed Lauren acting off a few weeks before her Cincinnati trip, but I chalked it up to her stressing about her new teaching job. She'd always been super organized, but now she was borderline obsessive, scheduling her days down to the second, leaving no time for our usual evening chats over dinner. What she said didn't always line up with how she acted. One night, as she rifled through her seminar papers, she told me, "Don't stress about me, I'm just trying to keep everything in order. It'll calm down after this trip." But I wasn't buying it. Lauren had never been this wound up before. Her insistence on going to the seminar solo also felt weirdly out of character. When I half joked about coming with her, her sharp "no" hit me like a slap. I told myself not to read too much into it, but the knot in my gut kept tightening, making it impossible to let it go. The night before she left, I got home from work earlier than usual. The house was dead quiet except for the low hum of the washing machine in the background. Lauren was upstairs, packing her suitcase with this intense focus, like she was solving a puzzle. When I walked into the bedroom, she barely glanced at me. "Hey," I said, leaning against the doorframe, "you're really getting a head start on this packing, huh?" She gave me a quick smile without looking up. "You know I can't stand scrambling at the last second," she said, her voice light but her hands moving stiffly, almost robotic. I stood there watching her fold a blouse, her fingers pausing on the fabric like her mind was a million miles away. She seemed so distant, it made me feel like a stranger in my own house. "Need me to print anything for your drive?" I asked, trying to keep things normal. "Nope, I've got it all handled," she shot back fast, then added, almost like she forgot, "but thanks, babe." That tiny pause, the way her voice got just a little too sweet, it sent another wave of doubt crashing through me. The night after she left for Cincinnati, I was in our bedroom, staring at her empty dresser. Even though she was gone, I could still feel her presence, but the room seemed colder without her. Then I spotted her travel bag sitting on the dresser, the one she'd said she forgot to grab. I figured I'd move it to the closet, keep things tidy. But when I picked it up, something caught my eye, a small red leather journal tucked underneath, half hidden. I stopped dead, my hand hovering over the journal's brass lock. Lauren always kept her journals to herself, never talked about them, and sure as hell never left them lying around. Finding it felt like I'd stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see, like I was breaking some silent promise between us. But the uneasy vibe I'd been carrying for weeks nudged me to pick it up. For a few minutes, I just stood there, staring at the locked cover, my mind racing. That brass lock glinted under the bedroom light, almost like it was daring me to open it. Part of me wanted to shove that journal back where I found it and pretend it never existed, but the doubts chewing at my insides wouldn't shut up. I took a closer look at the lock, noticing how simple it seemed, nothing too fancy. With a heavy sigh, I set the journal on the dresser and wandered to the kitchen. I needed a minute to clear my head, and a cold beer didn't sound half bad. By the time I came back, I'd made up my mind. If Lauren wasn't hiding anything, why lock the journal? And why had she been acting so different lately? The next morning, I swung by a little shop downtown and picked up an identical red journal, complete with a matching key. It cost more than I liked, but I had to know what was going on. Back at the house, I sat down with the new key, my hands shaky as I unlocked the journal and flipped to the first page. My heart was pounding like a drum as I skimmed the entries, my fingers trembling with every turn. At first, it seemed harmless. Lauren wrote about how excited she was for her new job and the stress of juggling all her responsibilities. But the deeper I read, the darker things got. One entry jumped out at me: September 8th, my new assistant, Lucas Torres, started today. He's tall, got this smooth charm, and grabs everyone's attention without even trying. The girls in class can't stop fawning over him. He's good at his job, no question, but I've got to keep things strictly professional. My pulse kicked up a notch as I read it again. Lucas, that name rang a bell. Lauren used to talk about him all the time earlier in the semester, but lately, she'd gone quiet about him. Another entry hit me harder: September 24th, spent hours with Lucas going over class readings. He's sharper than I gave him credit for. I've been thinking about me and David starting a family, but work's got me so swamped it's hard to focus on that. My grip on the journal tightened, my knuckles going white. Lauren's handwriting started looking rushed in the later entries, the words slanting across the page like she couldn't keep up with her thoughts. Then I hit an entry that stopped me dead. October 10th, Lucas locked the door during our meeting today. I told him that wasn't okay, but he just laughed it off, saying nobody would care. I froze, not sure what to say, so I dropped it. I'm torn up about it. A sick feeling twisted in my gut as I kept reading. The way she wrote about Lucas made it clear something was brewing between them. She sounded guilty and unsure, but there was this pull toward him she couldn't hide. Every new detail felt like a kick to the chest. I slammed the journal shut, my breathing all over the place. Staring at that locked cover, my mind was spinning. The doubts I'd tried to push down were now staring me in the face, impossible to ignore. Lauren was keeping secrets, and they were big enough to tear apart everything we'd built. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like I didn't even know who I was anymore. I grabbed the second journal from the shoebox, my jaw set. I had to know the whole truth, no matter how much it hurt. I turned the page, my stomach dropping as Lauren's words painted a picture of someone torn between temptation and guilt. At first, her entries only hinted at the struggle inside her, little clues that got louder with every page. September 30th, Lucas gave me that smile again during my lecture today. I shot him a frown, hoping he'd back off, but he just held my gaze. After class, he hung around to chat. His confidence throws me off, it's like he's playing a game and knows all the moves. I reminded him I'm married, and he just smirked, saying, happily, I hope. I should have been mad, but instead, I'm rattled. The way her handwriting leaned forward, her usually neat strokes wobbling, showed how much this was messing with her head. By early October, Lauren's words in the journal started carrying this heavy, emotional weight, mixed with guilt and second-guessing. October 16th, I messed up letting him shut the door. When Lucas asked why I've been acting off, I tried to laugh it off, but he stared right into me, like he could see my thoughts. Then he hugged me, way too long, way too tight, and I didn't push him away quick enough. For a split second, I wondered what it'd be like to just give in, but that thought left me sick with shame. This has to stop. My fists balled up as I read, anger bubbling inside me, tangled with this weird, aching sadness. Lauren wasn't just fighting off Lucas's moves, she was struggling with her own slipping self-control. Things got uglier as Lucas kept pushing. October 20th, he locked the door again today, claiming he needed a private talk about something big. I told him to keep it open, but he just smirked and blew me off. Leaning on my desk, he had the nerve to say I deserved better than my own husband. How does he even know that? I shoved him back, but the way he looked at me, it's like he's always got the upper hand. I hate that some part of me didn't mind it. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. The way he brushed off her objections made my blood boil. Lauren's guilt was obvious, but Lucas's sly, controlling game was just as clear. By November, her entries showed she was desperate to take back control. November 9th, Lucas went too far today. I've tried telling him we need space, but he keeps finding excuses to stick close. When I said this can't happen again, he laughed and said it's already too late. He's right, I can't erase what's happened, but I can put an end to it. After the seminar, I'm done. I shut the journal, feeling the weight of Lauren's inner chaos pressing down on me. Her guilt and Lucas's relentless manipulation painted a picture of something spiraling way out of hand, and it lit a fire in me to figure out what she was planning next. I sat in the kitchen, the journal still open on the table, its words burned into my brain. The clock ticked way too loud, like it was mocking me for the hours I'd spent wrestling with what I'd read. Anger carved a hole in my chest, mixing with this deep, empty pain that felt like it could swallow me whole. For 8 years, I'd trusted Lauren with everything, and now that trust was in pieces. My hands gripped the table's edge, knuckles turning white, as one thought kept hammering in my head, I needed proof. Hiring a private investigator wasn't something I jumped into easily. I spent hours pacing the living room, phone in hand, going back and forth. Part of me wanted to just confront Lauren, lay it all out and demand the truth, but what if she lied? What if she played it off like nothing was wrong? No, I realized, I needed something solid, something she couldn't deny. I googled local investigators and found Pierce Saw Investigations, a firm with a tagline about clarity in the shadows. That's exactly what I was after, clarity. When I dialed their number, my voice came out tight, barely hiding the storm inside me. Pierce Saw Investigations, how can we assist you? A calm, professional voice answered. I froze for a second, the weight of what I was doing hitting me hard. Then I forced the words out, I need proof my wife's cheating. I think she's seeing someone. The receptionist patched me through to Robert Miller, a veteran detective whose steady voice calmed my nerves a bit. Lay it all out for me, he said. I spilled everything I'd read in Lauren's journal, my voice cracking as I recounted the parts about Lucas. Miller listened quietly, then laid out a plan. We can set up hidden cameras in her hotel room and the one next to it. If she's meeting this guy, we'll get it on tape, photos, video, the works. Is that what you need? Yeah, I whispered, my gut churning. The next day, my phone rang, and it was Miller. It's taken care of, he said. Photos are ready. Check your email. I opened my laptop, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. The first picture showed Lauren walking into her hotel room with Lucas, his hand grazing her back in a way that felt too familiar. Another shot caught them through a half-open door, their shapes impossible to mistake. The last one hit like a sledgehammer, Lucas leaning in to kiss her, the moment so intimate it left no room for doubt. I stared at the screen, my breath stuck in my chest. My eyes stung as tears tried to break through, but I blinked them back, letting anger steal my nerves. Those photos were like knives, each one slicing deeper into what was left of our marriage. For a long time, I just sat there, frozen, the weight of her betrayal crushing me. When I finally moved, it was with purpose. I printed the pictures and slid them into an envelope, setting it on the kitchen counter. I didn't know exactly how I'd face Lauren yet, but one thing was crystal clear, the woman I thought I married was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't trust anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at that envelope with the photos inside. My anger had cooled into something sharper, more focused. I'd pictured storming up to Lauren, throwing the evidence in her face, demanding answers, but the more I thought about it, the less I wanted that. A confrontation would just get me lies or excuses, and I wasn't sure I could keep my cool. No, I had to play this smarter. First things first, I needed to protect my money before Lauren could pull anything. The next morning, I drove to the bank, my stomach in knots. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly as I walked in, forcing a tight smile. I need to take some money out, I told the teller, sliding my ID and account info across the counter. She was young, with a friendly vibe, and nodded. How much? 20 grand, I said, keeping my voice steady even though my insides were churning. Her eyes flicked up for a second, but she covered her surprise quick. That amount needs a manager's okay. Give me a sec. As she stepped away, my mind started racing. Would this look shady? Would Lauren somehow get wind of it? I drummed my fingers on the counter, glancing around the lobby for anything out of place. When the teller came back with the manager, she handed me the cash in a plain envelope. Anything else we can do for you, Mr. Hayes? The manager asked. I shook my head. Nah, I'm good. Thanks. Stepping outside, I let out a long breath, my hand tightening around the envelope. The money felt heavier than it should have, like it was carrying the weight of the life I was about to leave behind. Next, I headed to GL Tech, where I'd worked for the last 6 years. As I cleared out my locker, my boss, Mike, walked in. Yo, David, he said, looking surprised. What's this? You moving on? I paused, not sure how to answer. Just need some time off, I said. Personal stuff. Mike's brow furrowed. You're one of our top guys. This for good? I shrugged, avoiding his eyes. Not sure yet. Just need a breather. Mike's worry was real, but I couldn't bring myself to get into it. I shook his hand and walked out, a twinge of regret hitting me as I crossed the parking lot. That job had been my rock, and now it was another piece of my old life slipping away. Back at the house, I started piecing together the next part of my plan. I wasn't just looking to slip away for a quick break, I needed to vanish completely, for good. Sitting at the kitchen table again, I jotted down what I had to do: ditch my phone, find a temporary place to crash, sell my car, and swap out the plates. My eyes drifted to the cruise tickets tacked to the bulletin board, a bitter jab at the future Lauren and I had dreamed up. I ripped them down and chucked them in the trash, the sound of the paper crumpling loud in the silent room. As darkness settled in, I sat in the living room, that envelope of photos still on the table. I'd thought about leaving them out for Lauren to stumble across, but that felt too in your face. Instead, I tucked them into a drawer, figuring she could find them later, long after I was gone. By midnight, I'd packed a single duffel bag and tossed it in my car. As I drove away from the house, I didn't glance back. This wasn't just me running, it was the start of something new, free from the sting of her betrayal. Lauren stepped inside, the familiar squeak of the front door cutting through the quiet. She stopped, letting her eyes adjust to the faint glow spilling from the kitchen. The house felt eerily still, like it was holding its breath while she was away. Usually, David would be there, greeting her with a worn-out grin or a warm hug, but tonight, the place felt empty, lifeless. She dropped her suitcase in the hallway and headed to the kitchen, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood. A whiff of beer and pizza hung in the air, a sharp contrast to the lavender candle she liked to light to make the place feel like home. The kitchen table was mostly empty, except for a single piece of paper held down by the salt shaker. Lauren's stomach dropped when she saw David's handwriting. "Lauren, Mike called this morning about a job at the village center. I'm stepping in as senior foreman. Back tomorrow afternoon. Bree." The note was short, almost cold, with none of the warmth she was used to. Letting out a sigh, Lauren felt a mix of relief and guilt wash over her. She'd been worried David might have picked up on something after her trip, but this note made it seem like he hadn't. Still, the detached tone felt like a wall had gone up between them, one they were both pretending wasn't there. She sank into a chair, rereading the note, her fingers shaking just a bit. For a second, she thought about calling him, but the idea of hearing his voice made her chest tighten with dread. Instead, she stared at the salt shaker, her mind spinning with memories of their last talk, the cruise they'd been so excited about, and the secrets she was now carrying. The faint chatter from the cruise transport echoed in her head. The silence of the house closed in around her, heavy and stifling. Lauren stood up quickly, trying to shake off the unease, and headed upstairs to their bedroom. Everything looked normal, orderly as always, but something felt off. Her travel bag was still on the dresser where she'd left it, and the closet doors were cracked open just a bit. Her eyes flicked to the journal on the dresser, and she let out a small breath, relieved it looked untouched, or at least she thought so. She picked it up, her fingers tracing the smooth leather cover. Unlocking it, she thumbed through the pages, stopping at her last entry about the seminar. The words glared back at her like a guilty verdict: "After this trip, it's done. I'm focusing on David, on us." Lauren shut the journal and leaned against the dresser, catching a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Her face looked drained, worn out from the secret life she'd been juggling. For the first time in weeks, she let herself face the full weight of her decisions. The guilt that had been quietly simmering now surged, tightening her chest with a heavy, aching pain. "I can make this right," she murmured, her fingers gripping the dresser's edge. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper, but the resolve in it burned strong. She folded David's note carefully, placing it on her nightstand, and made a quiet vow: tomorrow, she'd sit down with David. Tomorrow, she'd come clean about everything. It was time to fix the mess before it was too late. Lauren perched on the edge of the bed, staring into the shadowy room, her determination growing steadier by the minute. A sharp knock at the front door jolted her, making her half-empty coffee mug clatter against the table as she set it down. The sound rang through the silent house. A glance at the clock showed it was just past 8 a.m. Peeking out the window, she spotted a police cruiser parked outside, its lights off but impossible to miss. A cold shiver ran through her. What were the cops doing here? Wrapping her robe tighter, Lauren opened the door to see two men on the porch, one in a dark suit, the other in a police uniform. The older man, tall with gray streaks in his hair, flashed a badge. "Mrs. Hayes?" he asked. "That's me," Lauren answered, her voice shaky. "I'm Detective Ramirez, and this is Officer Gomez. Can we come inside?" Lauren paused, her pulse racing. "Is something wrong?" Ramirez's face stayed professional, but his tone softened just a bit. "We need to talk to you about Lucas Torres." The air in the kitchen felt thick as the detective settled at the table. Lauren gripped her mug, her knuckles turning pale, as Ramirez started speaking. "I'm sorry to tell you this, but Lucas Torres was found dead last night. His body was discovered at his home around 7 p.m. Lauren went still, her thoughts crashing into each other. Lucas, gone. Shock gave way to a gnawing guilt that clawed at her. Her voice wavered as she asked, "What? How did this happen?" Ramirez watched her closely. "We're still piecing it together. What we know is that a call reporting his murder came from your husband's phone." The words slammed into her like a fist. "David," she whispered. "No, that can't be right. He wasn't even there." Gomez spoke up for the first time. "We traced the phone to Niagara Falls, Ontario, where we also found a discarded gun that matches the caliber of the bullets used in the killing. People near Lucas's place said they saw a man who looked like your husband around the time of the murder." Lauren shook her head, her voice climbing. "David wouldn't do something like that. He didn't even know Lucas." Ramirez leaned in, his tone steady but unyielding. "Are you sure about that? We found photos near the body, pictures of you and Mr. Torres, taken recently." Lauren's hands shook, and her face went ashen. The weight of his words was crushing, but she held on to her denial. "David's not a killer. You've got the wrong guy. Someone must have taken his phone or framed him." The detectives shared a quick look, their doubt hanging in the air. Ramirez stood, handing her a business card. "If anything comes to mind, give us a call. But Mrs. Hayes, if your husband reaches out, you need to let us know right away." After they left, Lauren collapsed into a chair, her mind reeling. The house felt emptier than ever, and for the first time, she started to wonder just how well she really knew David. At the brink of Niagara Falls, a misty haze lingered, cloaking the roaring cascade in a ghostly veil. The tourists had cleared out for the night, leaving the area hushed except for the water's deafening thunder. In the shadows of this awe-inspiring natural wonder, police uncovered fragments of David Hayes's life. A dead phone sat discarded in a trash bin near the parking lot. Next to it was a weathered leather wallet, emptied of cash but still holding David's ID and cards. Tucked under the bin's liner was a .25 caliber pistol, its serial number scratched off. In another nearby bin, officers found mangled license plates, their rough edges hinting at a rushed removal. Detective Ramirez scanned the scene, his forehead creased with focus. "He's either halfway across the country or setting up something bigger," he muttered to Officer Gomez, who was jotting notes nearby. Gomez eyed the pistol. "You think he's still around, or is this just a decoy?" Ramirez shook his head. "If he was gonna take a dive, we'd have found a body by now. My bet? He's trying to vanish. Dropping this stuff buys him a head start." The detectives tossed around other theories. Maybe David thought about confronting Lauren but chose to walk away instead, starting fresh somewhere else. Or maybe this was all a cover, hiding a more sinister plan. Without a body or more clues, they were stuck with guesses. Back at the Hayes house, Lauren sat at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of journals she'd pulled from the dresser. Her fingers hovered over the red leather covers, the brass locks glinting under the kitchen light. With a shaky breath, she unlocked one and started reading. Tears blurred the words as she reached the final entries. Lauren's thoughts spilled across the pages, her anguish clear in the messy, uneven handwriting. She reread the same lines again and again. I despise who I've turned into. David deserves so much more. After the seminar, I'm done. I'll put us first. Her hands shook as she flipped through, each page slicing deeper into her heart. She couldn't dodge her part in the collapse of their marriage anymore. It wasn't just Lucas's relentless pursuit or David's growing distance, it was her decisions, her failure to set boundaries when it counted. Her breath hitched when she saw David's name scribbled in a hurried final note. I love him, but I'm terrified he'll never forgive me if he knows. How do I even face him? The journal slipped from her hands, thudding softly on the floor. Lauren covered her face, her sobs shattering the quiet. Guilt, shame, and despair crashed over her, each wave hitting like the unstoppable surge of Niagara Falls. She replayed every moment in her head, the locked doors, the fleeting glances, the lies she told herself to justify stepping over the line. I destroyed it, she whispered to the empty room. I ruined everything. She shot to her feet, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her reflection in the window caught her off guard, hair a mess, face streaked with tears, barely recognizable. In a burst of fury, she swiped the journals off the table, sending them skidding across the floor. The crash rang out, then dissolved into silence. As time dragged on, her anger faded into bone-deep exhaustion. Lauren sank to the floor, clutching one journal to her chest. She stayed there for hours, staring blankly at the wall, frozen, her mind looping through every wrong turn that had brought her here. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, Lauren pulled herself up from the floor, her body weighed down by remorse. She placed the journals back on the dresser and stared into the mirror, her reflection haggard but resolute. Her voice was rough, but her words carried conviction. I'll face whatever's coming. I owe him that. Decision made, Lauren took a steadying breath and headed to the kitchen. The phone on the counter sat like a lifeline to the husband she might never see again. She wasn't sure if David could ever forgive her, or if she'd ever forgive herself, but she was determined to try. The hunt for David Hayes dragged on for days, then weeks, but turned up little beyond lingering questions. Niagara Falls was the last solid trace of him. Security cameras caught his car crossing the border checkpoint, but there was no sign of it exiting. Local cops combed through nearby motels, parks, and backroads, but every lead fizzled out. The discarded phone and wallet gave no hints about his next move, leaving detectives guessing whether he'd planned to disappear for good or if something darker had gone down. Detective Ramirez pored over the evidence time and again, muttering, a guy like Hayes doesn't just vanish. But with no new clues and resources running thin, the case eventually went cold, slipping into the pile of unsolved mysteries. Lauren sat in the quiet of the house, her once precise routines replaced by a drifting emptiness. Every corner of the place echoed with memories of David, his easy laugh, his focused silence when he worked, the faint creak of the stairs under his steps. The journals stayed hidden away, but their words haunted her, each one a sharp reminder of the life they'd lost. Guilt clung to her like a shadow. She dodged calls from colleagues and friends, unable to handle their questions or their sympathy. In her mind, she replayed every talk with David, searching for clues she'd overlooked, moments she could have handled better. Their marriage, once her anchor, now felt like an open wound. She thought back to how David had always had her back, tinkering with the car, whipping up her favorite dinners, holding her close when work got overwhelming. But she'd failed him in ways she couldn't take back. Some nights, Lauren pictured David out there somewhere, watching a far-off sunset. Other nights, she braced for the worst. The uncertainty ate at her, a fitting punishment for her mistakes. She was left with silence, regret, and a faint hope that maybe, someday, David might show up, if only to give them both the closure they were missing. Months later, the search for David Hayes had all but stopped. One evening, a letter arrived, and Lauren's heart caught at the sight of David's familiar handwriting. Lauren, I've gone far away, and this is my choice for good. I loved you, but the trust is broken, and I can't live with what's happened. Find yourself again. You deserve some peace. Goodbye. Lauren sat frozen, tears rolling down her cheeks. He was gone for good. The letter was a final goodbye, but also a quiet nudge for her to start over. She sold the house, packed the journals away, and vowed to move beyond her mistakes. Somewhere out there, David stared at a distant horizon, chasing his own freedom, while Lauren began her slow journey to rediscover who she could be.